The planet of Zyros had always been peaceful. Its people, the Zyrodians, lived in harmony with the land and sky, their cities shining with beauty and hope. It was a world full of life, laughter, and promise. Yet, all of that was about to change. It was a quiet morning when the first signs of danger appeared in the sky. The inhabitants of Zyros looked up in confusion as dark shapes appeared, blotting out the sun. These were no ordinary clouds. They were ships, massive, monstrous ships, shaped like jagged rocks and covered in dark, menacing armor. The Zharkith had arrived. The Zharkith were a ruthless alien race, known for their cruelty and thirst for conquest. They had swept through countless worlds, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. And now, Zyros was their next target. In the heart of the capital, Commander Lena held a council meeting with the planet's leaders. She could see the fear in their eyes. The emergency alarms had been blaring for hours, but no one could offer a plan to stop the invasion. The Zyrodians were not a warrior race. They were peaceful, focused on art, science, and culture. They had no defense against the might of the Zharkith. "We need to evacuate the people," said a voice from across the room, shaking with fear. It was Governor Varos, the leader of Zyros. "But where can we go?" Commander Lena asked, her voice firm despite the tension in the air. "The Zharkith are already attacking our cities. They'll destroy everything." "We need to send a distress signal," Varos suggested, looking toward Lena. "Maybe Earth, maybe they can help us." Lena's heart sank. She knew the history of Earth and its people. Humanity had always been a force to reckon with, but would they even respond to a call for help? Would they be willing to help a world that wasn't their own? "There's no time to waste," she said, making up her mind. "We'll send a message to Earth. It's our only hope." With that, they activated the planet's communication system, sending a distress signal into the vast reaches of space. The message was simple, urgent, and filled with desperation. "Help us. The Zharkith are here. We cannot survive without assistance. Please, Earth, we need you." As the message was sent, Commander Lena gathered what was left of the planet's military forces. The Zyrodians were not soldiers, but they would fight for their homes. Lena had trained a small unit of volunteers who could defend the planet's most important locations. But deep inside, she knew it might not be enough. The sky over Zyros grew darker as the Zharkith ships began to descend. Laser blasts cut through the air, striking the cities with explosive force. The Zyrodians scrambled to take cover as buildings crumbled and fires erupted across the city. There was chaos everywhere. The sound of screams filled the air as people ran, desperate to escape the destruction. Lena stood on a rooftop, watching the destruction unfold. Her heart pounded in her chest as she saw the Zharkith forces landing. They were soldiers, towering and fearsome, their bodies covered in thick metallic armor. Their eyes glowed with a cold blue light, and their weapons were capable of tearing through entire buildings in seconds. "They're here," Lena whispered, to herself. She turned to her small team of soldiers who were ready to fight despite the overwhelming odds. "We can't stop them," one of her soldiers said, his voice shaking with fear. "They're too powerful." "We may not be able to stop them, but we can make them pay," Lena replied, her eyes hardening with resolve. "For every one of our people they destroy, we'll take one of them down. We fight for survival, for our homes, and for our world." The battle began in earnest. Lena's forces fought bravely, but it was clear that they were outmatched. The Zharkith moved with military precision, overwhelming the Zyrodians at every turn. The city's defenses fell within hours. There was no place left to hide. As the sun set, casting an orange glow over the wreckage of the once beautiful city, Lena looked up at the stars. She had no way of knowing if Earth had received their distress signal, or if anyone was out there to help. But she couldn't give up hope. "Please," she whispered to the stars. "Please, Earth, hear our cry." This first part sets the stage for the story, introducing the conflict and the urgency of the situation on Zyros. It shows the desperate attempts of the Zyrodians to defend their world, while hinting at the possibility of help from Earth, setting up for the arrival of humanity's vengeance. Totamini. The message from Zyros had reached Earth, echoing through the vastness of space. A cry for help, urgent and desperate, sent by a planet on the brink of destruction. The Jarkith, merciless conquerors who had ravaged countless worlds, had set their sights on Zyros, and now it was humanity's turn to respond. Back on Earth, things were different. The human race, long underestimated by many other galactic civilizations, had been quietly preparing for the day when they would no longer be the underdogs. In secret military facilities, humanity had developed weapons of unimaginable power. In orbit around Earth, colossal warships sat in readiness. These ships were unlike any other in the galaxy, sleek, formidable, and heavily armed. Earth had learned from the mistakes of the past. They were ready. The government wasted no time. A special fleet was assembled, one that would carry humanity's wrath to the heart of the Jarkith invasion. Admiral Cassius Kane, a legendary figure in Earth's military history, was chosen to lead the fleet. Kane was a man known for his unyielding resolve, his tactical genius, and his complete lack of mercy when it came to those who threatened his people. His eyes, cold and unwavering, stared at the warship's monitor as the orders came in. "Prepare for launch," he commanded, his voice calm but filled with determination. "Our people are counting on us. We will not fail." The fleet consisted of 10 massive warships, each equipped with the latest in human technology, hypervelocity cannons, electromagnetic shields, and a new class of fighter craft capable of extreme agility in space combat. These were not the ships of yesterday's wars. These were the ships of vengeance. As the ships ascended into space, Earth's people watched from the surface, their hopes pinned on the distant battle that would soon unfold. News broadcasts ran endlessly, showing images of the destruction on Zyros. People cried for their fallen brothers and sisters on that distant world. But amidst the sorrow, there was a rising fury, an anger that burned in every human heart. The Jarkith had not only attacked a peaceful world, they had dared to threaten everything humanity had worked for. The human fleet entered hyperspace, their destination set for Zyros. For days the ships traveled, their engines pushing them faster and faster through the void. The crew worked tirelessly, preparing for the inevitable battle ahead. Admiral Kane held a strategy meeting, the room dark except for the glow of the holographic maps displayed in the center. "We will hit them hard," Kane said, his voice a low growl. "The Jarkith think they're invincible. They think no one can stand up to them. Well, they're about to learn what humanity is capable of." His officers nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the stakes. This wasn't just a battle for Zyros. This was a fight to prove that humanity was not to be underestimated, that Earth was a force to be reckoned with. Kane pointed to the holographic map. "Our primary target is their command ship. It's the heart of their invasion force. If we destroy it, we cripple their entire operation." The fleet arrived in Zyros' orbit. The planet, once peaceful and serene, was now a war zone. Massive fires raged across the surface, the smoke rising up to greet the human ships. The Jarkith fleet hovered above the planet, their ships like dark shadows in the sky, waiting for the final assault. Admiral Kane stood at the helm of the flagship, the Aegis, his eyes scanning the viewports. "All ships prepare for battle. Lock on to enemy targets." The battle began in an instant. The human ships unleashed a barrage of firepower that rocked the Jarkith ships. The Jarkith, unprepared for the sheer ferocity of the attack, retaliated. Quickly, their weapons firing blasts of energy that tore into the human fleet. But the humans were ready. They dodged and countered, their agility in space unmatched. Commander Lena, still fighting on the ground on Zyros, watched as the sky above her changed. It was no longer filled with the alien ships of the Jarkith. The sight of the human fleet descending was a sight to behold. It filled her heart with a mixture of awe and hope. Could it be true? Had Earth answered their cry for help? The human warships glided through the atmosphere, unleashing devastating laser beams that cut through the Jarkith defenses. Their fighter craft zoomed through space like a swarm of angry bees, taking out enemy ships with pinpoint accuracy. But despite the overwhelming power of the human fleet, the Zharkith fought back with relentless fury. They were a strong enemy, but they had underestimated the humans. "Keep pushing forward," Admiral Kane ordered, his voice cold as ice. "We're not done yet. We finished what we started." The human ships pressed on, their weapons firing in perfect harmony. One by one, the Zharkith warships fell. Explosions lit up the sky as the enemy ships crumbled under the weight of humanity's vengeance. But just as the humans thought victory was within their grasp, a new threat appeared. From behind the Zharkith command ship, a massive, planet-destroying weapon emerged. It was a huge cannon, its barrel glowing with an ominous red light. The Zharkith had brought their trump card to the fight. "We've got to stop that cannon," Kane said urgently. "If that thing fires, it'll destroy everything. No one will survive." The fleet's fighter crafts turned to intercept, but the cannon was too powerful. It fired a massive energy beam that struck one of the human ships, the Valiant, in an instant. The ship exploded, its debris scattering across the void. It was a devastating loss, but it only fueled the human resolve. "We can't let them win," Kane muttered under his breath. "Not now. Not after everything." With determination in his eyes, the Admiral issued his next order. "Target the cannon. All ships, focus everything on that weapon." The human fleet unleashed their most powerful weapons yet, all aimed directly at the Zharkith's cannon. The battle raged on as both sides threw everything they had at each other. The fight was far from over, but humanity's fury was unmistakable. They had come to avenge Zyros, and nothing, no weapon, no enemy was going to stop them. This part builds on the tension and rising action as humanity takes its first steps in the battle against the Zharkith. The stakes are high, and the human fleet is responding with full force. Their fury is palpable, and the conflict is heating up. Let me know if you'd like me to continue the story further. Omini. The battle in space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's fury, unleashed in full force, had caught the Zharkith off guard. Ships that had once been thought unstoppable were now falling one after another, their destruction lighting up the dark expanse of space. But the Zharkith were not ones to give up easily. Their commanders, ruthless and calculating, quickly adapted to the new threat. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Aegis, watching as the holographic battlefield shifted before him. His fleet had dealt significant damage, but the Zharkith's command ship was still intact, and their ultimate weapon, the massive cannon, loomed ominously. He knew they had to end this soon. The longer the fight dragged on, the more damage the enemy could cause. "Sir, the Valiant has been destroyed. We've lost contact with the Spectre as well," reported Lieutenant Marla, her voice tense. The room was filled with the hum of machinery, the sounds of communication systems crackling as the battle raged on. "Understood," Kane replied, his tone unshaken. He had seen many battles in his time, but this one was different. This was about more than just victory. It was about sending a message. Humanity would not back down, not when lives were at stake. Commander Lena reports the ground forces are holding their own. "They've taken the city of Drachna back," Lieutenant Marla continued, offering some good news amidst the chaos. "Good. Let's make sure they stay that way," Kane said. "Get me a direct link to the Draken." A few moments later, a hologram of Captain Varric appeared in front of Kane. The captain's face was lit by the glow of his command center, his expression serious but determined. "Admiral, we're holding the line, but we're running low on resources. We need reinforcements," Varric said, his voice filled with urgency. "You'll have them. We're pushing forward with everything we've got. Just keep the Zharkith from regaining any ground," Kane ordered. "Yes, sir," Varric responded. The hologram flickered and the transmission was cut. Kane turned to his crew. "All ships, we're going in for the final strike. Target the cannon with everything we have. We don't stop until it's destroyed." The crew worked quickly, inputting commands into their stations. The Aegis and the rest of the fleet maneuvered into position, their weapons charging for one last desperate push. Kane watched as the Zharkith command ship loomed larger in the distance, its cannon glowing bright red, ready to fire. "They're preparing to fire," Lieutenant Marla called out. "Cannon charge at 95%. "We don't have much time," Kane muttered. He clenched his fist, staring at the enormous weapon. If they didn't act now, Zyros would be gone, and the Zharkith would be unstoppable. "Fire," Kane ordered. The human fleet released a wave of energy blasts, their weapons locked on the Zharkith cannon. The first volley hit its mark, but the cannon absorbed the damage with little effect. The Zharkith were already preparing to fire back, and it was clear they had anticipated the human assault. "They've activated their shields," Marla shouted. "We can't penetrate them without a concentrated strike. Keep firing. All ships, synchronize your shots," Kane barked. "We can't let them fire that weapon." For a brief moment it seemed as if the humans might be defeated. But then Kane saw something. Movement on the Zharkith command ship. A small fighter, almost invisible against the massive structure, was emerging from the hangar. Kane's instincts kicked in. "Helm, adjust course. I want that fighter," he ordered. The Aegis turned sharply, its engines roaring as it broke away from the main assault. The rest of the fleet followed suit, creating an opening in the battle as they pursued the enemy fighter. The fighter dodged and weaved through the battlefield, skillful and fast. But the human ships were just as agile, their precision and speed pushing them forward. The Aegis locked onto the fighter, and the tactical officers fired a volley of concentrated energy blasts. One of the blasts hit the fighter's rear engines, causing it to spiral out of control. It crashed into a nearby Zharkith warship, creating a massive explosion. For a moment, the chaos in space seemed to quiet, the sudden flash of light filling the dark void. But the battle raged on. Admiral Kane turned his attention back to the Zharkith command ship. "All ships, fire everything we have at that cannon. Now!" The human fleet concentrated their firepower. Massive blasts, ionized beams, and explosive rounds hit the cannon in rapid succession. The Zharkith ship's shields faltered under the pressure, the energy waves rippling around the hull. Slowly but surely, the Zharkith's last defense began to crack. "It's working," Marla exclaimed. "We're breaking through their shields." The Zharkith ship's cannon, its last hope, began to falter. The red glow of the weapon flickered, then went dark. The energy beams from the human ships found their mark, striking the cannon's core. With a deafening explosion, the weapon was destroyed. The remaining Zharkith forces, realizing their ultimate weapon was gone, attempted to retreat, but it was too late. The human fleet pressed forward, merciless and unrelenting. Ship after ship, the Zharkith warships were torn apart by human firepower. As the battle finally began to settle, the human fleet emerged victorious. The Zharkith command ship was a smoldering wreck, its once proud hull now reduced to floating debris. But Admiral Kane knew this victory came with a price. Humanity had avenged the fallen, but the cost had been high. The Valiant, the Spectre, and countless others were lost in the fight. Still, Earth's message had been clear. Humanity was no longer a planet to be ignored. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We've won," Marla said quietly, a mixture of relief and exhaustion in her voice. "But the cost is worth it," Kane replied, his gaze fixed on the wreckage of the battlefield. "Humanity's vengeance has been served. Now, we rebuild." This part of the story shows the human fleet's persistence in overcoming overwhelming odds. Humanity's final push to destroy the Zharkith cannon highlights their resolve in the fierce battle for survival. The battle is intense, and despite heavy losses, the humans emerge victorious, setting the stage for the next chapter. Let me know if you'd like to continue with the next part. The victory in space was just the beginning. While the Zharkith had been defeated in orbit, the battle on the surface of Zyros was far from over. The Zharkith forces had already taken control of the planet's key cities, and their troops, ruthless and relentless, continued to ravage the world. But now, with the human fleet's intervention, there was hope. Admiral Kane's victory in space had brought a temporary relief, but it was the ground forces who would decide the true fate of Zyros. Commander Lena and her surviving team of soldiers stood at the front lines, facing an enemy that outnumbered them by far. However, the Zharkith had underestimated the humans' tenacity. and now they would learn just how powerful Earth's resolve truly was. Lena watched from a small command center, the map of the city of Drakna glowing in front of her. Her eyes scanned the positions of Jarkith troops and the routes of retreat. The city was still smoking from the recent battles, but it was a symbol of humanity's first victory on the ground. The city had been taken back, but there was no time to celebrate. The Jarkith weren't finished yet. "We need reinforcements," Lena said, her voice steady but full of urgency. "The Jarkith aren't just going to give up. They'll launch a counterattack soon." A voice crackled through the communicator. It was Captain Varric from the Drakon. "Commander Lena, we've landed more troops from the fleet. We'll be with you in 5 minutes, Varric said. "Good," Lena replied. "But make sure your team is ready for a fight. We're not just holding the line anymore. We're taking the fight to them." Lena stood up from her chair and looked out the window, her eyes narrowing as she saw the distant dust clouds rising. The Jarkith were gathering their forces, and they were preparing for their final assault. She knew this would be the hardest part of the battle, the part where humanity would prove their worth. As the ground forces moved into position, Lena led her team to the front lines. The soldiers, all wearing the standard-issue human combat gear, were a sight to behold. They weren't just soldiers. They were survivors, warriors who had come to protect not only Zyros, but the future of humanity itself. Lena walked beside Lieutenant Marla, the young officer who had been with her since the beginning of the invasion. Marla had proven herself in the heat of battle, and now she was as determined as Lena. "I've never seen the Jarkith this desperate," Marla said, her voice tense. "They're preparing for a full assault. They won't hold back this time." "They've made the mistake of underestimating us," Lena replied. "Now we show them what humanity is made of." The Jarkith forces emerged from the wreckage of the city's outskirts, their massive armored bodies marching in perfect formation. The alien warriors, towering and intimidating, had their weapons raised, ready to strike. The air crackled with tension, and the ground seemed to shake beneath the weight of their steps. But the humans didn't flinch. Instead, they raised their own weapons, their fingers hovering over the triggers. The battle erupted in a violent explosion of gunfire and explosions. The human forces, led by Lena, charged forward, moving with precision and coordination. The Jarkith retaliated immediately, their weapons firing streams of deadly energy in all directions. But the human soldiers had been trained for this moment. They moved with purpose, ducking behind cover and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Lena led the charge, her combat rifle blazing as she gunned down 2 Jarkith soldiers in quick succession. The air around her was filled with the sound of weapons firing and explosions echoing off the ruined buildings. She could hear her soldiers shouting orders, coordinating the attacks and keeping the enemy at bay. But the Jarkith were relentless. They fought with an intensity that could only come from desperation. For every Jarkith that fell, 2 more took their place, their monstrous bodies charging forward without fear. Lena gritted her teeth, determined to see the fight through to the end. "Push forward," she yelled, rallying her troops. "We've come this far. We take back this city." Human soldiers moved forward, covering each other as they advanced, through the war-torn streets. They worked as one, no longer just a group of soldiers, but a united force. The Jarkith, despite their strength, were slowly being overwhelmed by the sheer determination of the human soldiers. Lena moved with her team through the city, engaging the enemy wherever they appeared. The Jarkith, despite their advanced technology and terrifying strength, were not prepared for the human spirit. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, humanity pushed back harder. For every soldier lost, 100 more took their place. Hours passed, but the fighting didn't stop. Lena and her team moved from building to building, clearing out pockets of Jarkith forces. The streets were littered with debris and the remains of fallen enemies. But humanity's resolve never wavered. By the time the sun began to set, the human forces had reclaimed most of Drakna. The Jarkith had been pushed back into their last stronghold on the outskirts of the city. It had been a brutal battle, but the humans had fought with a fury that the Jarkith had never expected. "We've done it," Marla said, her voice filled with exhaustion but also relief. "The city is ours." Lena nodded, but her expression remained grim. This is just the beginning. The Zharkith won't give up so easily. We need to finish this. As the human soldiers began to regroup, taking stock of their losses, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had come to Zyros as strangers, but they had fought alongside its people as equals. This was humanity's vengeance, not just for Earth, but for every planet that had been destroyed by the Zharkith. Humanity had sent a message. We would never be silenced. And the Zharkith would learn the hard way that underestimating humans was a mistake they would never live to regret. This part of the story highlights the intensity of the ground battle, showing humanity's resolve and their ability to overcome overwhelming odds. It emphasizes the theme of unity, determination, and the fierce nature of human warriors, with Commander Lena leading the charge. Let me know if you'd like to continue the story. The battle for Drakna had been won, but the war was far from over. The Zharkith were far from defeated, and Commander Lena knew that their victory in the city was only the first step. As the human forces regrouped, the Zharkith began to retreat, but not without a plan. It was clear to Lena and her team that the Zharkith had something even more dangerous up their sleeves. The ruins of the city were quiet now, but the air was thick with the scent of smoke and destruction. Lena stood on a high platform, looking down at the battlefield below. The once proud city had been reduced to rubble, but the human soldiers had given their all. They had fought like a family, and they had won. But Lena could sense that the real test was still ahead. "Commander, we've received a transmission from Admiral Kane," Lieutenant Marla said, walking up beside her. Lena turned, her eyes narrowing. "What does he have to say?" "He says that the Zharkith are gathering their remaining forces at a hidden base. They're planning something big," Marla replied, showing Lena the holographic map of Zyros. A red dot blinked on the map, marking the location of the enemy base. Lena's eyes hardened. She had suspected as much. The Zharkith wouldn't stop at just invading. They would use every last ounce of their strength to finish what they started. But humanity was ready to stop them. This was their moment. "We're not letting them regroup," Lena said firmly. "Prepare the troops. We're going to take them down before they can do any more damage." The remaining human forces, along with their alien allies, began to mobilize. They moved with precision, their ranks tightening as they prepared for the final push. The soldiers were tired, their bodies sore from days of non-stop fighting, but they were driven by one goal: to protect Zyros and stop the Zharkith once and for all. As the human forces advanced toward the enemy base, the air above them was filled with the hum of the human warships. The Aegis and its sister ships, having wiped out most of the Zharkith fleet in orbit, were now providing air support, keeping watch over the battlefield. The human fighter jets zoomed across the sky, engaging any Zharkith forces that attempted to flee or regroup. But the Zharkith were no longer retreating. They had dug in, and they had prepared for one final stand. As Lena's forces approached their hidden base, she could see the immense walls of the enemy's stronghold looming in the distance. The Zharkith were ready. "Hold formation," Lena shouted, her voice carrying across the comms. "We break through their defenses, we move fast, and we finish this." The ground forces advanced swiftly, making their way through the treacherous terrain of Zyros, which had been torn apart by battle. The Zharkith base sat at the center of a vast canyon, surrounded by towering cliffs on all sides. It was a natural fortress, and the Zharkith had turned it into an impenetrable stronghold. But the human forces had something the Zharkith didn't: determination. As they reached the entrance to the canyon, the Zharkith opened fire. Laser blasts streaked across the air, and the ground shook with the impact of explosives. The human soldiers ducked behind cover, returning fire with their own weapons. The sky above them was filled with the sound of fighter jets engaging the enemy, creating a chaotic, deafening noise. Lena led her team forward, moving through the chaos with the calm focus of a seasoned commander. She knew that this was the moment they had been waiting for. The Zharkith might be powerful, but the human will was unbreakable. They made their way deeper into the canyon, fighting their way through the Zharkith defenses. The enemy soldiers were fierce, but the humans fought with a desperation of their own. For every Zharkith soldier that fell, a human would rise to take their place. The fight seemed endless, but the humans never stopped moving forward. The heart of the canyon stood the Zharkith's command center, a massive structure of metal and stone. It was heavily guarded, but Lena's forces were relentless. They stormed the gates, their weapons blazing, pushing through the enemy defenses. The Zharkith fought back with everything they had, but they couldn't stop the human assault. "We're almost there," Lena shouted, her voice filled with determination. "Push forward. We end this now." With one final push, the human forces reached the command center. The Zharkith leaders, realizing that their defenses had crumbled, tried to make a last stand. But it was too late. The humans had fought too hard, and they were not about to let the enemy escape. Lena's team breached the command center's gates, their weapons raised as they charged in. The Zharkith leaders, their once mighty bodies trembling, stood before them. There was no fear in their eyes, only the cold, unwavering resolve of warriors who had fought for their survival. But Lena was not here for mercy. She had come to end this war, to stop the Zharkith from destroying any more worlds. "Humanity's vengeance is here," Lena said, her voice as cold as steel. "And you are the ones who will pay." With that, the battle inside the command center began. The Zharkith fought fiercely, but the human soldiers, backed by the strength of their allies, proved to be more than the enemy could handle. The Zharkith leadership was crushed, their empire broken. And just like that, the war for Zyros was over. The enemy was defeated. Lena stood amidst the wreckage of the Zharkith stronghold, her soldiers victorious. They had done it. The planet was free. But Lena knew that the victory was not just for Zyros. This was a victory for all of humanity. They had proven their strength, their resilience, and their unwillingness to be crushed by the weight of their enemies. Humanity had answered the cry for help, and now the galaxy knew that they could never be ignored again. This part shows the intense ground battle as humanity pushes forward to defeat the Zharkith once and for all. It highlights the determination, strategy, and bravery of Lena and her team as they lead the charge to liberate Zyros and prove humanity's strength. Let me know if you'd like to continue with the next part. Oh Minnie,